But this ignores our own complicity. Study corn, the food that has been the staple food for people in this region for thousands of years. NAFTA led to the systematic reduction of tariffs protecting Mexico's corn farmers, 2/3 of whom subsist on 12 acres or less of land. Those tariffs were completely removed last January. During the last 12 years, the U.S. has subsidized U.S. corn farmers to the tune of $56 billion. $56 billion. This led to a global dumping of U.S. corn in the Mexican market at prices that were between $105 and $145 million per year, lower than the cost of production. Lower than the cost of production. That means that the U.S., because of U.S. Farm subsidies, U.S. farmers were able to sell their crops at a lower price than it cost them to produce those crops and still make a profit. Do you imagine that you, with 12 acres of land, would be able to outcompete farmers with their $56 billion of subsidies as they dump corn in your markets? Guess what happened in the last couple of years? You know what happened. The farmers shifted their surplus corn sales into biofuels. As a consequence, corn prices have soared in Mexico, making the price of the staple food in that country eat twice as much as it was a few years ago. That means more poor people are going to be pushed to the edge of starvation. Oxfam estimates that 1.5 million Mexican farmers were driven out of business because of NAFTA. Where do you think some of those farmers are headed in order to feed their families? Some of them at least head for U.S. cities to find work so their families won't starve. Others head for the factories along the border. I've been taking students to the maquiladoras again since 1994. When I went there in 1994, the average hourly wage of a Mexican worker was $1 per hour. When I came back in 2006, the average wage of a Mexican worker in the maquiladora was $1 per hour. 12 years of difference, no difference in the wages. The only real difference is that in the meantime, the peso had been devalued so that $1 bought even less. If you worked at McDonald's at a minimum wage job, it would take you about 1/2 hour to earn the price of a gallon of milk. If you're working in an American-owned maquiladora factory along the border and you're a Mexican worker, it will take you 2.5 hours to earn that same gallon of milk. It will take you 2 days to earn the price of Pampers for a baby. And you wonder why people may be thinking of headed north. We benefit from that. You look at the Sears, look at the corporations that are along the border. They're all providing low-cost clothes, computer equipment, refrigerators, the whole gamut of products for the U.S. economy. So if we want to think of why people are headed north and what is pushing them into these desperate acts, think of our own global economy and the inequalities that it creates. More and more people then are threatened with starvation and begin to migrate north. Popes from Pope Pius XII to John Paul II have affirmed the right of desperate people to migrate. In the words of Pius XII, the sovereignty of the state, although it must be respected, cannot be exaggerated to the point that access to this land is, for inadequate or unjustified reasons, denied to needy and decent people from other nations, unquote. There's a lot of work to be found in the U.S. Those who rant and rave about alien invasions never seem to figure it out that there are powerful interests that want the national media and groups like Mr. Simcox Minutemen to continue to blame the victims. While many American businesses would welcome a guest worker program, others are quite happy with the present situation. Undocumented workers don't dare go on strike for better wages, don't dare organize to gain health benefits, don't even dare complain about an unsanitary and unsafe working environment. Speaking on behalf of the U.S. Catholic bishops, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio, the chair of the Bishops' Domestic Policy Committee, stated, "Fundamental rights to work, decent wages, safer working conditions, and the freedom to join a union are not commodities to be allocated according to where you're from, when you got here, or what documents you possess." 2,000 miles of wall will not stop desperate people, nor will doubling and tripling the number of U.S. Border Patrol agents. Do we wish to surround the entire country with a wall from San Diego to Key West, from Key West to Maine, from Maine to Seattle, from Seattle to San Diego? We already know that the coyotes are taking people up through the California coastline with boats. The solutions do not lie in building fences along the border to a possible tune of $10.5 billion for the southern border alone. Again, the American bishops are quite clear in saying Catholic teaching states that the root causes of migration, poverty, injustice, religious intolerance, armed conflict, must be addressed so that migrants can remain in their homeland and support their families. For the Catholic bishops of the U.S. and Mexico speaking together, the outlines of a just immigration policy are clear, although the details may be complex. And I'll be quick so you have time for your questions. 1, a just trade policy. That means renegotiating NAFTA so that it doesn't undercut either U.S. or Mexican workers, and so that it adjusts the economic inequalities between both nations. Now is the time, the bishops say, for both the U.S. and Mexico to confront the reality of globalization, a globalization of solidarity. 2, a path to legalized status for undocumented migrants that is not punitive. The millions of hardworking, family-centered migrants have served their probation for longer periods of time than you have served yours, Mr. Simcox. They've earned the right to legal status. 3, a broad and streamlined visa program that fosters reunification of families of migrant workers, and with it an end to ICE raids that split family apart. 4, a temporary worker program with appropriate safeguards against exploitation and the right of workers to migrate to and from their homeland. 5, an end to human rights abuses along the border by U.S. Border Patrol. Private security firms the biggest source of human rights violation in these last few years, hired by the U.S. government and by vigilante groups. That is not easy, and in the present political climate, it will be difficult to create those kinds of changes. But we won't get at those changes by blaming victims, by making fear-mongering attacks on people coming to us from the border for the simple reason that they want their families to eat. Thank you.